Mazda has been making a very compelling argument for themselves as a premium brand that doesn't carry a bankruptcy-inducing price tag. But can the CX-30 challenge the most affordable model in the Lexus lineup? Let's find out. So there are two main reasons that I want to compare these. One, they both air from brands that carry a reliable reputation, and two, the Lexus UX has a starting price that's identical to where the Mazda tops out. And when we look at features, the Turbo CX-30 packs a whole lot more for the money. Now both are going to have LED headlights and taillights. The Lexus actually gets much more intricate DRLs than the Mazda. Both the Turbo CX-30 and the UX come with standard proximity unlock and lock, though unlike the Lexus, the Mazda offers a 360 view camera in lieu of just parking sensors. It'll also come standard with rain sensing windshield wipers and a power rear gate, something that's an option with the Lexus. And the amenity advantage definitely becomes more present when we hop on the inside. Before I do that, we do need to give credit to the UX for its style. Now this is all just my opinion, but I actually like how the Lexus looks. It's got a very compact footprint, super sharp lines everywhere, with some nice details too. It's not just overstyled.
To me, I see it more as an opulent hatchback than a crossover, like the smooth-lined CX-30.
I love Mazda, but sitting next to this, it does kind of look like a potato with body cladding. Let me know your thoughts.
And briefly, I'd like to thank Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana, the friendly, community-focused dealership that has let me test drive various CX-30s over the years to make this video possible. If you're in the market, check them out.
The interior of the Mazda CX-30 has every right to be compared to any compact luxury SUV. You have premium-looking, soft-touch materials covering the dashboard, the whole door panel, along with some nice stitching, a two-tone color combo, and silver accents throughout.
After the nice materials, the next thing you notice is that you've entered a bunker. The beltline is high for this class, resulting in a closed-off feel.
The build quality feels good. The panel fitment is admittedly not up to the standards of Lexus, but quite frankly, the attention to detail is. You have really nice, satisfying buttons for everything,
from the steering wheel to the analog HVAC controls,
and an oversimplified dial setup for the infotainment system.
It's not for everyone, and it's boring by today's tech standards, but I find that refreshing. The dial lies where my hand does. It's easy to use in motion, and since the Mazda 3 just received wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, I'd expect that to be added to the 2024 CX-30 too.
And it'll be hooked up to a Bose audio system that I think is more powerful and maybe a little bit more crisp than what you'll even find in the loaded Lexus. It's also pretty comfortable. The seats are maybe on the firm side, and if you have broad shoulders, they may pinch at you a little bit, but I do find them to be supportive. All of your turbo models will have heated seats as standard, and this still comes with stuff like dual zone automatic climate control, heated leather wrapped steering wheel, a head-up display, and a partial virtual cluster that doesn't really display a lot of information, but it looks nice. Now it is missing a couple of amenities like ventilated front seats or wireless charger. Storage up front is also acceptable, but moving around back is where the CX-30 usually gets clobbered by its competition. I'm 6'3" with the seat in a comfortable yet not excessive position. I can sit behind myself, but my knees are wrapped around the front seat, and the protruding grab handle really limits knee room. There's also a sizable driveline hump, but at the very least, the seats are comfortable and you do have rear console vents. I think it could work for a small family if it has to. And there's a similar story in the cargo area. It is fairly tall, and when you have the seats folded, it's quite practical, and it has a spare tire. Neither of those things apply to the Lexus UX. The cargo hold of the UX is very short, though you can partially lower the cargo floor, which helps, but even when you fold down the rear seats, this thing barely offers the versatility of a tight hatchback. The back seat, on the other hand, has less of a drivetrain hump and a little bit more knee room, even though legroom is still very compromised. Headroom between the two is comparable. So if you had to, you can also fit people over 6 feet in both rows, and there are rear console vents, though neither of these offer heated rear seats. Moving into the front of this UX F Sport handling package, it's a pretty swanky, sharp-looking car, and we still have satisfying toggle switches for your HVAC controls. There's mostly matte finishes, so it hides fingerprints, and I think Lexus does a great job of accenting and adding cool little details, like even how you turn it into sport mode is interesting. The gauge cluster, like the Mazda, does not offer a whole lot of information, but but it quite literally moves. It doesn't need to do that, but it's fun. The touchscreen is also extremely stripped down and easy to use with a quick response time and good resolution. It'll also come with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard, even if you get the smaller and less fancy looking 8-inch screen.
It's more techy than the Mazda without being excessive.
While they're not metal like they are in the LC500, I love this style of door handle too.
The cabin combines flair with sensible touches, though, like the Mazda, the visibility is subpar, the windshield is small, but I'm sure they did this because that makes it sporty.
While this isn't too heavy on the utility side of things, it does have a really cool center console that opens both ways, comes with a neat little nook, and a little bit more storage than the CX-30. The seats are also super comfortable. The F-Sport handling package does get a little bit more bolstering, but all these Lexus seats have great thigh support, and they're a little bit more plush, including the headrests. If I had to spend more time in a car, it would be the Lexus, just not by as big of a margin as you would think. On the road, the contrast grows even more. In the case of the Lexus, it feels like a big budget Toyota. Under the hood of every UX in the United States is a 2-liter naturally aspirated inline-4 hooked up with either 1 or 2 drive motors, making for 181 horsepower. And that is complemented by an eCVT, which uses an additional motor to help manipulate the transmission into different gear ratios. The result is a car that doesn't feel athletic, but always feels ready.
While flat-out performance is unimpressive, I think it has enough juice to feel sufficient no matter where you live, but it would be nice to have the option for more power.
The only real downside with the eCVT is that it still has that continuously variable sound. Thankfully, there's more engine insulation here. It doesn't ring throughout the cabin like a Corolla would, but it just doesn't have the reassuring sound or thrust that most other luxury SUVs possess. Though I do find it hilarious that here I have an ASC button,
which adds in off-key engine noise. It sounds less like one engine's induction note being enhanced and more like a lawnmower getting attacked by a fake Lamborghini.
Though when you're driving on the highway, I think you'll appreciate the Lexus's better active driving aids. This thing comes standard with adaptive cruise and lane centering, whereas the Mazda, you have to get the Premium Plus trim in order to get that lane centering, and it only works up until 40 miles per hour. Outside of that, it's just going to ping pong you in between the lanes. Tire noise is kept down, the engine is usually inoffensive unless you're really trying to accelerate, and wind noise is present, though here more so because I have crossbars. Now, a big leg up you're going to have here in the UX is going to be gas mileage. This thing, when you're easy on it, can achieve over 40 miles a gallon with ease.
Thankfully, both of these are happy with regular fuel, though turbo CX-30s make more power on premium. While it's a nitpick, I wish the gas tank was larger on the less efficient Mazda.
And while on a medieval type road, the Lexus UX holds a clear advantage. So this is the F-Sport handling package, which adds an adaptive dampening setup. Now, this actually doesn't have a comfort mode, it only has a sport mode. But regardless, out here, this is smooth over small to medium-sized imperfections. Hitting bigger stuff never really comes across as harsh. It's able to absorb multiple breaks in the pavement without feeling jittery. It doesn't achieve luxury barge status by any means, but if you're looking for the most comfortable car that's truly compact, the UX is great. And it's also not too shabby when the speed and the corners get more dicey. In Sport S mode, this thing corners nicely. Body roll is very well kept. I wouldn't describe the steering as quick or overly reactive, though it changes direction with ease. The fully independent suspension is highly confident, secure. There's just not a whole lot of emotion there. Well, I think it's weighted all right. It's just completely numb, and the steering weight doesn't really build up as you're going through corners, so it doesn't feel as natural and predictable as some other cars, like the Mazda.
I'd also expect the standard UX suspension to lose a hair of the body control that you get with the F-Sport handling pack. It should ride similar over a bad road.
While the car is small and easy to drive, the visibility in here is just okay. It doesn't make this feel too claustrophobic, at least up front, and blind spot monitoring is standard.
The UX is special on the road because it gives you real luxury car comfort and handling in a tiny footprint. However, it could seriously use a more potent powertrain and better driver engagement.
In more than one way, the Mazda CX-30 is superior to the Lexus on the road. Now, under the hood of these top-level CX-30s is going to be a 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-4. On regular fuel, it makes 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, but you can inflate that to 250 ponies if you throw in premium. I don't think that's necessary, as I've gotten this thing to 60 over 2 seconds quicker than the UX. In fact, you could go with the base CX-30, which gets a naturally aspirated version of this engine, and it'll still be quicker than the UX. But outright speed is not the more important factor here. It's how it operates on a day-to-day basis. And the UX does a good job of smooth power delivery and having enough passing power. The naturally aspirated CX-30 is still refined, just not as much so. The turbocharged model, completely different story. Now, no matter which way you go, you will get a 6-speed automatic transmission. And here with the turbo, it shifts slow, but it's smooth. And this thing has so much torque, and the lag is virtually non-existent for forced induction. It actually uses a special valve to increase exhaust pressure to spin up the turbine quickly at low RPMs. So this feels lively at all times. It also pumps in some noise. It just sounds much more expensive than the car that comes from a well-established luxury brand. If you prompt this thing at all, it does downshift, and if you nail the throttle, this quickly executes passes with much more authority than the Lexus. This also comes with a proper all-wheel drive system. It can send up to 50% of torque to the rear wheels. It has an off-road mode that can aggressively brake vector, which essentially helps this thing transfer power side to side to get you out of some tricky situations. Really, its biggest limitation is its ground clearance, but it's not like the UX is any better on that front.
In fact, it's much worse, with a belly-scraping 6.3 inches compared to the Mazda's 8. The Lexus is more like a luxury hatchback, which carries its own set of pros and cons.
The Mazda will come exclusively in all-wheel drive too, whereas the Lexus, you have to pay extra in order to get power to the rear, and it does that through a separate electric motor, like most other Toyota hybrids. However, this one is the old system, so instead of using a more efficient, powerful, permanent magnet motor like it does up front, it uses an AC induction motor, which can be more robust, but it only makes 7 horsepower, which means it's really just for helping you get out of a snowy parking lot. Yeah, this thing just does not need to try hard at all, and you're getting up to speed. At 65, we're a little bit below 2,000 RPM, and it's quiet. I'm getting some road noise in here, a little bit of wind noise.
But it's easily on par with the Lexus.
Now, driving the CX-30 on the same horrible road, you'll notice some more jitteriness for sure. This does not have any sort of adaptive dampening. It's just not as smooth as the Lexus over the medium to light imperfections. And then once you start hitting the large stuff, it's a little more harsh. This is also working with just a torsion beam suspension, so I think it does a good job considering that. But if you live on horrible roads where you really test that suspension, the Lexus certainly comes out on top, though I would still consider them both to be comfortable. Pushing the CX-30 around corners, even if there's some imperfections in the middle of them, it's not really hindered by its suspension. Body roll seems a little bit more prevalent than what's in the UX. I think that, especially with the F-Sport handling package, comes off a little bit more buttoned down, but the steering in the Mazda more than makes up for it. I really hope that Lexus and Toyota can steal some Mazda engineers, because what they do here is so consistently good. So the steering itself is not super quick, but it has some weight to it. In fact, maybe a little bit too much at parking lot speeds, but around here it gives it some substance. And the way that the steering builds up in weight also helps it feel natural. It's a very predictable experience, and I love that.
Add in the lack of play on center with a dash of steering feel, and you have an SUV that's affordable but drives like it isn't.
These are family-minded vehicles, and when it comes to safety, both of them performed exceptionally well in IIHS testing, both in crash tests and the performance of their autonomous braking systems. Now, when it comes to reliability, there are no doubts in my mind that the Lexus UX will perform well in the long run. Toyota's had great luck with their hybrid systems, outside of that you're inevitably going to have to replace the battery if you're keeping the thing 12 or 15 years. And Mazda has had a great reputation in the last 10 years. The 2.5-liter turbocharged engine, outside of a bad batch of valve seals in 2021, has been fairly reliable, some miscellaneous woes reported, but still definitely a car I would advise to people who highly prioritize reliability. I think I may give the Lexus the edge when it comes to which one I'd trust more because of its naturally aspirated engine and extremely proven reputation, but when it comes to maintenance and repair costs, any sort of servicing you do on a Lexus is going to be more expensive than a Mazda. And God forbid you break anything, it's going to grow even more. Still, running cost as a whole, I think both of them will be pretty low when you consider that the Lexus is also an efficient hybrid. In a comparison like this, when it comes to choosing a winner, it's all about what matters to you the most. And that remains true with this test, though you would expect the Mazda to be the more sensible one all around,
and the Lexus to be the more upscale option, a purchase driven by emotion rather than value. That's not the case here, because depending on what you look for in a luxury car, the Mazda is better. The steering feels more substantial, it accelerates with ease, and the power delivery is silky in most scenarios. The interior also holds its own premium argument, and it has much more cargo hauling capabilities. For some, the Mazda is more sensible and more upscale. However, the Lexus is an oddball too. It adds more build quality and aesthetic flair inside and out, like what you would expect from the badge, and it also gives you a more isolated ride on all roads. Better body control, far superior efficiency, full-blown lane centering, more traditional tech, and maybe a slight advantage in visibility and backseat comfort. On top of that, it should be extremely reliable. That's a lengthy list, so I could easily argue that this too is the more sensible and upscale option. If I had to choose one with my own money, I would go with the CX-30. For me, it's forgiving enough, it feels premium, has a more relaxed powertrain, the engaging steering carries more substance, and I value its versatility. Now, my broad recommendation to traditional luxury buyers is the UX. That decision mainly rides on the comfort, quality, and swagger it offers. The Mazda put up a valiant effort, and seeing what the company is capable of with the new CX-90 makes me believe that this outcome could change in the future. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me shock the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff, and check out my Patreon for an additional podcast. I'll see you in the next one.